Welcome again to educator.com, and in this lesson, the entire lesson is just introducing two books that you will be reading for the next couple weeks in the course. So if you are in grade school, you need to be reading A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. If you are in high school, you're going to read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. If you're in middle school, you can kind of pick which one you want to read. It's always just kind of up to you. You're in between. You can choose either one. Both of these books are what we call science fiction literature. Now, probably most of you already kind of know what that is, but I'm just going to give you a quick example. Science fiction are books that usually imagine future events and future technology, things that we could invent and things that we could do, but that we haven't done yet. They almost always imagine different human cultures in different alien worlds. And as a consequence, they almost always take place in either the near future or the very far future. However, it's science fiction, so there are plenty of exceptions to that rule. One of the most important things about science fiction is they usually have symbols or analogies for events or ideas or, science that's going on in the real world at the time that the literature was written. So that's why I'm going to explain some of the historical events that were going on while these books were being penned. Let's go over Wrinkle in Time first. First off, our author is Madeleine L'Engle. Well, she wrote her first story when she was 5 years old. When she was a student in grade school, she was often considered shy and stupid. She didn't like either one of those terms. Nobody would, and it made her very, very frustrated. She is an Episcopalian Christian, and that did kind of influence her writing, and as you read on, you'll eventually see where it is. Also, one of the greatest things about her is she actually influenced the writers of a TV show called Lost. And in fact, if you watch this TV show, one of the characters is flipping through this very book while he's lost on the island. Now, this book was written in 1963, and as I said, science fiction normally talks about the real world in kind of symbolic or analogous ways. Well, in 1963, the United States was struggling against totalitarian governments in the other side of the world. Now, these governments were very, very creepy. They wanted to control absolutely everything about the lives of its citizens, so they spied on their own people. I'm not kidding. Men in black suits would go into someone's apartment when they weren't there, and they'd put in a bunch of surveillance equipment, and they would spy on this person to make sure that they were conforming to everybody and they were uniform with everybody else. Now that just means the same. We need everybody to be the same. Now if you didn't conform and you didn't lockstep with everybody else, you wouldn't get arrested. And you wouldn't get arrested for what you did, but you would get arrested for what you thought. And when you got arrested in governments like this, it wasn't like there was a trial, it wasn't like there was a jury, it was usually just an interrogation, and oftentimes people would never, ever come back. And if they did go back, well then the government would say, we'll let you go if you become one of our spies. Now, Wrinkle in Time is also like Harry Potter. First off, all the protagonists are children. Now, I say protagonist because there is more than one main character. It's mostly about one character, but she's got, a group of friends around her. So I say protagonist, lead characters. Additionally, the villain is very mysterious until the end. I mean, we just hear about this creepy thing that they're going to go fight, but we don't really know what it is until the very end of the story. So it's like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Voldemort, Voldemort, Voldemort. Oh, there's Voldemort right at the end of the story. And in both of these books, the hero uses the same strength. You'll find out what that is at the end of Wrinkle in Time. Now, how was this book received? Well, first off, it wasn't received well. Yeah, because it had too many girls in it. This was not a popular thing in the 60s. I mean, this was one of the first books where you had a lot of female characters playing very, very important roles. I mean, we got one main character who's a girl, and then the mentors to this girl are also, women. And then there's no father, and it's, well, wait, there are way too many female characters. This isn't Leave It to Beaverland. Also, it had liberal religious ideas. Believe it or not, this book might have been written by a Christian, but there are a lot of Christian private schools that banned this book because of its liberal religious ideas. Now, let's go on to Brave New World. We have our friend Aldous Huxley, who is, you can't see it too well, but you can Google search an image to him. He's got these great glasses here. He's kind of a stern, smart-looking fellow. He wrote his first story when he was in college, not when he was 5 years old. Aldous Huxley was a pacifist and a humanist. Now, what do these terms mean? Well, a pacifist is somebody who thinks war is just wrong and will never ever go to war or even use violence in any means whatsoever. It's who they are. A humanist is a very, very complicated term, and it means a lot of things. In this context, it just means an atheist who's really into science. That's about all it means for now. His favorite kind of science was psychology and eventually something called parapsychology. Now, psychology is a scientific study of human emotions and behavior. Parapsychology studies the same thing, but not necessarily in a scientific way. Kind of starts, getting into what you might call spirituality at that point. Now, what was the world like in 1932 when this book was written? Well, we had just discovered this thing called mass production. Now, in our world, if you have an iPod or an iPhone or an old computer, you just throw it away when you're done with it because it's mass produced and you can just buy another one. But the world wasn't always like that. Before mass production, if something was made, it was made by usually just one guy, and you would buy it and you'd keep it for your entire life. I'm serious. Mass production, man, everybody needs a car, so we'll come up with a really, really fast way to make cars, and we'll come up with these factories and assembly lines, and we will produce so many cars that people can just throw them away when they're done, and we'll make new ones. There's also this fellow called Freud. Now, you've seen pictures of Freud, I guarantee it. He's a bearded guy with a cigar, and he's always stroking it like this and wondering if a cigar is just a cigar. Yeah, he was a psychologist, one of the first. According to Freud, most human behavior is all about kind of how our families are and how we're raised. That's who he is. Also, in 1932, World War I had recently ended. It wasn't too long ago that the entire world, and by world I actually just mean Europe, had seen the most catastrophic war that had ever happened. This was a big deal because prior to World War I, people were very, very optimistic about what the future was going to look like. I mean, they wouldn't have expected trenches and, people buried and machine guns and stuff like that. I mean, they thought that everybody was going to live in peace and harmony and that we were just going to be so good with science that we wouldn't need anything anymore. But then World War I happened and people were a little less optimistic. Now, Brave New World is a special type of science fiction. It does imagine the future, it does imagine future technologies, but it's what we call a utopia or a dystopia. Utopia is a combination of Greek words that means good place, and at the same time it means no place at all. Dystopia uses the word dys in front of topia, and it just means bad place. So a utopia or dystopia is a vision of a perfect human society. All problems have been solved by technology and science, and we don't have any conflict anymore. Everybody's happy, and nobody is starving, and there's no war, and there's no hunger, because it is a perfect good place. That is also a bad place because there might be a lot of control. And you'll find out why when you read Brave New World. Now, what was the reception of Brave New World? Well, people called it sophomoric. Now, what do I mean when I say sophomoric? Do I mean sophomore in high school? That's not what I mean. Sophomoric means kind of immature, childish, not grown up. I mean, Aldous Huxley wrote his first story in college, and a lot of people read this, and they were very, very smart individuals who had been in universities for years and years, and they read this and they thought, oh, well, this is something that a college freshman would have written. And so that's what they meant by sophomoric. They just thought it was immature. Also, it seemed to endorse drug use, and you'll find out later how much they like drugs in Brave New World. Now, ask yourself, just because a book describes drug use, does that mean that it endorses and prescribes drug use? Let you judge for yourself whether you think this book is actually encouraging you to take drugs. Strangely, even though it wasn't popular in its time, it remains popular today. And the reason why is people read this book and they think a lot of this is either happening now or has already happened. So your assignment is to start reading. If you're reading Wrinkle in Time, just read Chapter 1. And then you're going to summarize Chapter 1. Now, I know you're thinking, I can summarize in a 3-act structure. Almost. We haven't even gotten through the first act in Chapter 1 yet. So when you summarize Chapter 1, just look at all the events and look at the things that happen in it, and just get it down to about 300 words. And by 300 words, I actually just mean 250. Now, who is our lead character? Well, figure out who that is. And then write, about 5 sentences dedicated to who our lead character is and why you think they are that way. If you're reading Brave New World, you have more reading, so I'm giving you less writing. Read chapters 1 through 3. This is your introduction into this world. It's a very, very strange one. And you're just going to answer 2 short answer questions. First, where do babies come from in Brave New World? How is this done? And why are babies born this way? Answer how and answer why. Why is more important than how. Give it 8 sentences. That's all I'm asking. How are children raised? And why are they raised this way? Again, 8 sentences. We're just thinking about the children. So, most important thing is just kind of relax and have fun when you're reading. Don't be thinking about the assignment when you're doing it. And after you're done with the reading, go ahead and look the assignment again. Make sure you do it, and thanks for using Educator.